Here's what you're going to get out of this course. We're using WordPress as our carrot, that is the excuse to get you to learn all these sysadmin skills you'll need. So obviously at the end, you'll have a really nice, fully optimized WordPress install, which will save you, if you went out and bought the hosting for yourself, it's like 30 to 250 bucks a month. And I'm not kidding about the 250. There are plenty of very popular WordPress, managed WordPress hosting services, which literally for the same setup we're going to use that's going to cost us something like $5 a month, these companies are charging in the range of $200 to $250 or $300. But you're going to have more than just a WordPress install. This is about learning. So what we really want to do is get you set up with a rock solid hosting platform, which isn't just for a single website. You'll be able to use the system that we set up here to host multiple websites and web applications. And you're going to be able to do it in a way that you could potentially build out into a business for yourself. Most importantly, you're going to get real-life sysadmin skills from this course. I'm going to treat you like somebody I just hired for a junior role. And that means there's going to be some hand-holding, but no spoon-feeding or coddling. Of course, we're going to cover all the commands you need to run, all the basic concepts that you need to understand. But my goal is that at the end of this course, you'll be able to continue your learning independently. You'll be able to pick up larger and more complex projects, and you'll be able to have all the knowledge you need to kind of finish learning the basics, all the practical skills that you'll need for continued learning. What we're about to do in a much more specific way. Well, we're setting up a robust, professional-grade WordPress hosting platform. At the end, you'll also have one WordPress site running on top of that, although adding more is trivial. And you'll have that WordPress site set up as an e-commerce site. So you basically get a web store out of the box. To do that, we're going to set up Linux and learn to use it. It's fine if you've already done this, and it's fine if you haven't. We're going to install and configure a web server, Nginx in our case. Since WordPress is a PHP web application, we're going to configure PHP and configure a way for our web server to talk to PHP. We're going to deal with databases. We'll cover the very basics of why, what, how a database works. And we're going to use MySQL to set up a basic database user permissions for WordPress. Of course, we're going to set up the actual WordPress application and learn how to use it. And then, most importantly, more important than points 1 through 5 combined, is point 6, which is having the real-life stuff that goes along with actually running a system in the real world. And that is performance tuning, monitoring, automation, backups, and security. That's sort of the real-life component that I think a lot of courses really skimp out on. I used professional grade earlier. What does that really mean? Well, in the real world, the place where most tutorials, courses leave you, which is the, okay, great, we've just set up our whatever it was, it's not enough. If you call a project finished at that point in real life, you're just going to get fired. Setting something up is the first step. Really building a system that you can run easily over the long term and that's stable and secure and where you kind of know what's going on, that requires all these other things that we're going to talk about. Obviously monitoring what's actually happening on the server, how much memory does this website use, what is my most memory hogging or disk space hogging website. Performance optimization, we're going to cover how to speed up your website loading times by about 100 just through some basic caching. We're going to cover security, which must be baked into everything you do as a sysadmin, because nobody likes a 13-year-old Chinese child logging into your website without your permission and posting spam. Doesn't make you look good to clients either. Backups, because it's that thing that you don't think is important until you get burned. Automation, which is really the core of how you need to think as a sysadmin. And documentation, which many people seem to think is like, that's not important until I'm working or whatever. But the reality is it's not just for those times when you get hit by a bus and your sysadmin team has to like figure out how to run all the stuff you were responsible for. In reality, documentation is mostly for yourself, because 2 months after setting something up, when you work on it again is going to be 4 o'clock in the morning after something's gone wrong and you've gotten an alert. And at that point, you can really spend a lot of time going in the wrong direction if you don't have documentation there to be like, okay, what do I do and why is this set up this way? How do I not break this? Documentation is you, your smarter, better looking self in the future, giving you good advice now. Just going to run through the specific skills which you will learn as part of this course. Linux basics, web server basics, database basics, WordPress hosting basics, and then some practical hosting skills that are sort of going to apply to any web hosting situation, like basic server administration, remote server administration, monitoring and performance optimization, security, troubleshooting, some networking, that kind of stuff. How this course specifically is structured to help you learn efficiently. As we've mentioned before, pure theory, which you get in a lot of courses, isn't enough. Project-based learning is one of those ways in which you can do almost everything that current learning science says to do without a lot of extra time or pain. So as opposed to memorizing theory, you're going to use learning projects, and that'll give you the advantages of they're practical. You immediately are applying all the theory you're learning, and they also give you a useful end result, something that can make you money, something you can talk about in job interviews, something that can allow you to help friends and family. They're inherently motivational. Projects that you pick are simply going to be cool, useful, fun things. They're going to be things you're interested in. So there's a lot of frustrating parts, especially when you start working on your own without a guide like this course taking you through everything. But when you're on your own, there's a lot of frustrating parts where you're simply researching something or something doesn't work and you're taking a couple hours to track down where you went wrong. Well, having a project that's actually cool enough to make that worth it is really important, because realistically, chances are you've got a busy life already. Maybe you've got a job and you're trying to switch careers, or maybe you're in school and you don't have a ton of extra time. Maybe you've got a family and it's like, you need to do this fast. Having a project-based approach is realistically going to give you that push you need to actually sit down and work when you come home from work, when you're already tired, or when you've just finished for the night and it's like 10 p.m., right? Having a cool project is what's going to actually ensure that you do learn this stuff and not just keep putting it off. In a little bit more detail, this is sort of the resume or CV version of these skills. That means you're going to learn command line and bash basics, creating and managing users and groups on Linux, a little bit about the file system layout on Linux, file ownership and permissions, working with remote servers and in a command line interface, so using things like SSH to connect to machines, working with files using the nano editor, etc. We're going to talk about service management with systemd. We're going to talk about server hardening and security, and we're going to just cover the philosophical and theoretical underpinnings of the services that we are about to run, which are essentially HTTP. It's a web server, so it uses the web protocol HTTP, DNS, the internet phone book, and then some basic networking and network troubleshooting. We're also going to cover monitoring and logging, which is sort of a fundamental knowledge for troubleshooting. The Nginx web server is going to be what we're using to host our files. We're going to learn how to manage that service, set up a basic static website, and then increase the complexity and host WordPress, which is a dynamic website. Dynamic meaning it has some logic to it. It doesn't display the same thing to every single user. We're going to boost our performance with caching, and we're going to learn a little bit more about how Nginx deals with configuration files and the configuration hierarchy. We're going to learn about the MySQL database, arguably the most popular relational database in the world, and it's one of those like basic sysadmin skills that gives you a huge plus mark in any hiring process for a junior role. I'm going to show you how to install and set up a MySQL database and manage the service. We're going to create a database for the specific service which we'll be running, which is WordPress. And we're going to create database users and manage their permissions. We'll also deal with database backups, which are a bread and butter sysadmin thing. Obviously, we will be talking about WordPress. It's essentially the carrot, as I mentioned before, which we're using as an excuse to learn all the Linux sysadmin fundamentals. So we'll cover application setup, configuration, security, file system layout, some performance tuning, and basic usage, so you can kind of teach someone else how to run their own site.